That was such an interesting movie, Never Let Me Go. Some people, I think, kind of wrongly labeled it as sci-fi, science fiction, which it really wasn't. Obviously, cloning and things, but a kind of fascinating theme running through it, a peek into the human soul, as it were. What do you recall about playing that character? And it's from the book. The author, Kazuo Ishiguro, actually praised you and said you were absolutely perfect for that, which is high compliment coming from the man who wrote the book.
Yeah, I mean, that's he was a big deal to me. I remember reading the book, a couple of years before, and thinking if they ever make this into a film, I have to play Kathy. But that seemed very, very out of reach at that point. But yeah, it was just the most. The book is so beautiful. It's the most beautiful book, and I just remember. It was straight after Sundance that the opportunity came along, and it was kind of one of those things. It was because of an education that I was even a part of that conversation, able to get that job. So, it was such a dream getting to play the part because she's got this beautiful monologue throughout the film, and there was so much from the book that I wanted to try and cram into the film as well because there's really gorgeous passages in there. But getting to work with Kira again was, and actually getting to work with her properly in a way that in Pride and Prejudice my part had been so little. It was just amazing to be in scenes with her, and then of course Andrew, watching that clip with Andrew, just he's just so brilliant, so such a good actor. So yeah, it was amazing.
It was great. And I watched Jimmy Kimmel and I followed all your travails trying to get driver's licenses over the years and things like that. And which is funny
It all
because
started there.
in this movie they required you to drive and how difficult was that? Because you didn't have a driver's license, I guess.
I didn't. I did. It was all in the end. I think sort of a very brief moment of me just coming around a corner, and then they cut and put us on a one of those trucks, and and then had someone else do the driving. But yeah, I mean, it was also just the most interesting. The casting that came. Donal Gleeson was in the film, and Andrea Riseborough. There were just these extraordinary people coming in doing, and kind of early, the beginning of their careers as well, and coming in and doing these like brilliant couple of scene parts. And Sally Hawkins, playing the teacher when we were younger. So it was an
Oh,
incredible. Yeah,
it's amazing. Then speaking of
yeah.
driving, you did a movie I saw. I was at the premiere in Cannes of this movie, Nick Refn's Drive, which was a completely different, but it brought you another BAFTA nomination there. I don't know what it is with you and driving and that you're in a movie called Drive, but I think Ryan
Yeah.
Gosling was doing most of that. Uh,
It
talk
was.
about that a little.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, Drive was just the most. I had seen Bronson and I had seen Valhalla Rising, and I was just like, "Who is this director?" It was just, I mean, what? And so, of course, when I heard that he was making Drive, and I sort of muscled in and got was very lucky to meet him and read for the part. And I'd been such a long time fan of Ryan, and the book of Drive is just so brilliant. So I mean, all the elements came together, and it really was. I think the film has a kind of dark fairy tale element to it, and there was definitely something sort of magical about shooting it in LA, and it felt like a sort of, the whole thing felt very fairy tale. But it was a wonderful experience, and Nick is just. I mean, I'm sure you've met him and interviewed him. He's just a completely one of a kind.
Oh, he is definitely one of a kind. I have his big coffee table book over here of exploitation movie posters that
Mm.
is amazing, a really something. So that was at Cannes that year, and then Venice Film Festival, another movie, and very off what we looked at you earlier in your career doing period roles and things like that. Shame was another great director, Steve McQueen. You really fought to be in that movie. You were determined to be in that movie, right?
Yeah, I just remember reading the script and, you know, getting to the passage where she sings New York, New York in the club. And I just thought, oh, this is like, I mean, I said it at the time, but she felt like some sort of cousin of Nina's in The Seagull. There was just sort of, I don't know, there was a through line for me. And I felt really strongly from the minute I read it that I really wanted to do it. I obviously Michael Fassbender's genius. And so I just you know, made sure that Steve knew how passionate I was about it, and was very, very keen and eager in our meeting, to the point where I sort of jumped in a taxi with him to Soho, just because he kept on trying to sort of end the meeting. He was like, "Well, it was really nice to meet you," and I was like, "Well, where are you going? What are you doing now?" And he was like, "Well, I've got to go to Soho for a meeting," and I was like, "Me too. Let's go. I'll come with you." And in the cab ride, I was like, "Well, here's the reason why I think, I know that you might not expect me, to do this part, but like I really know, and I just wouldn't leave him alone. I think he just sort of eventually tired of me badgering him and let me do it.
Well, I'm so glad you got that role because I mean, a lot of directors may not have, looked at some of your work and said, "Can she really play an extrovert, an exhibitionist?" All these get drunk and and all of these kinds of things. And as you mentioned, seeing New York, New York, and your version right there with Sinatra and Minnelli is so specific and so memorable. That song belongs to all three of you, Liza, Frank, and Carey, I think, after
Thank
that.
you. I'll take it. Yeah, I mean, it was just, it was the most. I just loved how bold he was, and he is in all of the films he makes. But his vision for that scene was just clear from the beginning, and he just wanted it to be just one take. So as nerve-wracking as it was, I just think he's such a genius, and so I was so excited by the idea behind it, and that the rest of the film is so fluid and moves so much.
Yeah.
And I loved that as well. I just loved the movement and the way that it felt like we could just do anything. But that just being a sort of static shot was just very, yeah, very cool.
Oh, it's pretty amazing. And you mentioned Fassbender, who's terrific in this film, and of course, it looked like some of it might have been improv. Did you go off the script there and work with him and kind of invent as you went along? Was Steve McQueen willing to see that happen?
Yeah, we did in rehearsals. We did lots and lots of improv. We didn't have a huge amount of rehearsal, but we met a couple of nights and did stuff, and that worked its way into the script. So it had a kind of improvised feeling, and also because our DP Sean Bobbitt he was so on the move with us. So there's something that makes it feel kind of not theatrical in the sort of dramatic sense, but there's a sort of energy to it that it feels very kind of fluid and moving and feels like in the moment, because the camera is just going. We just had complete freedom of where we wanted to be, and he would just be with us, but make it feel like, I don't know. It was just, I think he's the most brilliant DP. So yeah, there was a lot of it that was improvised in rehearsals, and then kind of we sort of then learnt that and incorporated it in.
Well, we're going to take a look at a scene from Shame right now, followed by another major movie that you did called The Great Gatsby. So let's take a look at Shame and The Great Gatsby.